Yeah, thanks again for everybody being able to join today. I know with the weather we had to hit some hit the Audible playbook, unfortunately. But I think it's important for us, especially with the beginning of the year, looking at a couple of changes coming up over the course of the next year, to have a chance to meet as often as possible, at least as the year gets started. So hopefully we can still have a productive conversation, even though we're all remote today. So hopefully everybody had a chance to take a look at the agenda I'd like to follow. Relatively simple and straightforward. I've got a couple of items on my end that I want to talk through for the board. Then I want to hear from each of you, report what's going on in your committee, and let you all bring everybody up to speed on what's going well, where you are, what's going poorly, where we can help, and so on and so forth. So look for that in a little bit. Just a reminder as we get started of what we are and what we're doing, why we're all here. If you've got the FPA strategic plan in front of you, then you'll see our mission statement. It's to be the organization that actively fosters the value of financial planning and advances the practice and profession of financial planning in the Middle Tennessee community. Vision to be the indispensable resource to the CFP professional in the Middle Tennessee area through support in the domains of education, advocacy, practice management, and community. So remember, everything that we're trying to do in here should directly impact one of those four avenues. So on that note, first item to report to you guys is about the chapter executive. We had what we thought was really good news and turned out to be not so good thereafter. There's been a handful of us that have been had our hands in the process face-to-face with the search for the chapter executive. On what happened with that, we started and we reached out to a handful of individuals. We did the job description on the American Society of Association Executives website. Had a couple of interviews from that, narrowed it down to two final interviewees, and one of which we decided to make an offer to. But once we decided to make an offer, we stepped back and started to question how we were historically paying and contracting, specifically Patricia, and how we were planning to do that going forward. One of the issues that was asked was, does this person need to be 1099, or are we going to be breaking any labor laws by hiring them as a salary W-2 employee, which is technically what we had done in times past. Turns out what we were intending to do was going to be breaking some labor laws. So we changed our mind and decided to do it differently, and to hire this incoming chapter executive as a 1099 independent contractor. Increase the pay just a little bit to accommodate those self-employment taxes. By the time we got all that sorted out, Christmas came around, everybody was traveling, Patricia was basically out of pocket. The person we were trying to hire was out of pocket. So that to say, it took us about 3 weeks to finally connect with the person we had offered. And by the time we did, she declined the position. So here we are, starting from scratch all over. And we have posted the job again in the American Society of Association Executives website. We've received 6 or 7 different applications so far. Unfortunately, the nature of the association executives, I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with it, but it's something that a lot of people do remotely and handle a lot of different associations at one time. But we've had 3 or 4 of our applicants be remote, and only another 3 or 4 be local to Nashville. So right now we've got, I want to say, 4 different candidates. We're setting up phone interviews next week and early the following, with intent to have face-to-face interviews the 5th and 6th of February. So hopefully we'll have a very quick turnaround from that point onwards. There is theoretically a scenario where we have a chapter executive up and running by the February meeting. But I want everybody to prepare as if that won't be the case. So my report to you, the board, on the current status of the chapter executive search. I'll turn it back over to you all. What's going through your heads as you hear that? Any thoughts or questions, words of encouragement or discouragement?
I've got, Nathan, this is Michael. I mentioned to him, be a really good candidate, and it can be centralized within, a supporting organization. I have an individual that works in my office. He's a paralegal. He's very, very much on the administrative side, handles a lot of that area of the business for us. So as far as his skill set, I think he'd be a really good candidate. And, of course, through our practice, we're very supportive of what FPA is doing. So if we wanted a person that it would not cost us as much, I believe that he would be interested, and the team can interview him, but we probably would not have to pay him as much to do the executive role for FPA as what you're experiencing, or at least the pricing that we were seeing before. I think that that's something that could be very well handled. Plus, we have a background and experience with what's happening, so we have familiarity with what FPA National is needing, the deadlines, requirements, and so forth. So it's just something for the team to think about. If y'all want to interview him as a part of this process, I think it would be good for continuity. I think it would be good on as far as the cost, so it doesn't get so exorbitant that it has a future, an immediate strain or a future strain on the FPA budget.
I love working through personal connections with people that we already trust. So, Michael, I think I mentioned the first time you brought him up that I'd love to see his resume. If you could follow up with me and get a resume from him soon, I would be more than happy to host a telephone interview with him, and if it works out, to move forward from there to a face-to-face interview. But I'm coordinating, to those of you who don't know, I'm coordinating this process with the assistance of Cynthia Jackson, who is an FPA national employee. I don't know exactly what her title is, but I know her as super helpful. So she and I will handle that first step of the process, that is the phone interviews, and then go down from there. So if you could come up with a resume and get it to us, that'll be step number one. And if not a resume, then at least contact information. Then we've got somewhere to go from there. Is that good by you, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. He's in my office, and so, but if you want to, I'll be back in. I don't get back until late Friday evening, so I can get you something as early as Monday. But I can have him pull his resume together, send it over to you. But he already has office space as a computer to be able. A lot of these things that we had expenses with Patricia, we would not have that situation with him because we already have a location. We already have computers. We already have the familiarity with the FPA requirements. I'm constantly in contact with FPA National on some other things as well. So I just think it would be some good continuity for what we're trying to do.
That makes sense to me. So and we're happy to wait until Friday evening. Like I said, the end of next week is when we're hoping to host telephone interviews. So you've got some, we've got some time to wait until Friday evening or Monday by any means. So I'm on board with that.
Cool.
Anything else from anybody on the board? Thoughts, questions, concerns? All right. One other thing that I will verbalize. Touch with a handful of people on the board already. You know who you are. And if you've not heard from me on this, then you're not one of those people, and you're the person that I'm looking to with this statement. I itemized as much as I could of Patricia's or the chapter executive task list to get us prepared for the next meeting and just to make sure that we can maintain our current operating status. A lot of different tasks, a lot of them just administrative in nature that we have not historically done as a board. Like I said, I lean pretty heavily on 5 or 6 of you. The other 6 or so of you, I want you guys to be very sensitive. And that I've encouraged that first 5 or 6 to please reach anybody else on the board for help and assistance in getting some of that stuff done. So like I said, I've put some people in charge of things, and if they ask for your help, please go out of your way to see what you can do to help them out. And if it needs to come back to me to further organize things, by all means, send it on back and let's brainstorm and figure out what we can do. And if you don't like that, then very sorry. Next item on the agenda, I want to get
Hey, Nathan?
conversation about our calendar for the year coming up. As we talked about, as we left our last meeting, the new adopted calendar was going to be that we would have January, February, and March for our traditional monthly meetings, and that starting in April, we would adopt a quarterly meeting schedule in order to accommodate the multiple different programming options we're hoping to introduce, what with Next Gen and Knowledge Circle and so on and so forth. So this is a conversation that I think I'm going to be leaning on Taylor and Brian to get some insight on from what they're looking to get done. But I've got a small group of the board together on Monday of this week to have an in-depth conversation, and I want to bring you up to speed on what we left things at. And that is, as we're getting prepared for our monthly meetings, or not monthly, I'm sorry, as we transition into our quarterly meetings, I think we've been up in the air as to whether the quarterly meetings would be a half day, whether they would be in the morning or in the afternoon, or whether they would be the same hour and a half long meeting status that we've had historically. Where the small group landed on Monday morning was that we want to maintain the same hour and a half long, shorter consolidated meeting schedule. They're still meeting on April and July, and April and July specifically, at 3:30, going until 5. But then we also want to introduce a, we'll say, formal social component immediately after the meeting, so that we would have essentially the meeting lasting from 3:30 until 6:30, with only the first hour and a half being formal programming and the last hour and a half being social, networking, food, drinks, that sort of thing. Very similar to, let's say it a different way. We're essentially following what turned out to be a very successful meeting by all intents and purposes at Trust Corps back in, I guess it was September. I'd like to step back and get the feedback from the rest of the board to hear any objections or support that idea. Quarterly meetings being an hour and a half long for programming, and then another an hour and a half of social time thereafter. Feedback, questions, thoughts?
Nathan, this is Burton. When would the meeting start? Would they begin again at 3:30 or earlier at 3? What's the thinking there? Did you?
Yeah, so still thinking the exact same setup as what we've been doing historically. That is
Okay.
30 start time. Well, I guess technically we open it at 3 o'clock for sign in and registration, but a hard start time of the meeting of 3:30.
Okay, and then we would finish at 5 and then go an hour and a half after.
Correct.
Okay.
Nathan, it's Brian. What about venue? Have we got narrowed down options in terms of where those meetings would be held to facilitate refreshments?
Yes, I'm going to speak for Daryl, because I heard from Kevin that he might be in support of letting Trust Corps host both of those meetings in April and July this coming year. So Daryl, did I understand that correctly, that Trust would be willing to host that?
Yes, this is Daryl. We are willing to host that, and we're willing to host the reception afterwards. We are just looking into our host liquor liability coverage to decide if we need to hire a bartender so that the serving of alcohol can come under their liability and not ours. But we'll work that out.
Daryl, you're a hero.
Okay.
Not trying to be, just trying to help.
Nathan. Nathan? Hello?
Go ahead, whoever that is.
It's Roy. I'm having a hard time.
Go ahead, Royce. I don't know what, I think we lost Nathan. Go ahead, Royce.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just wondering, he mentioned April. We don't traditionally meet at all in April. Why are we having a board meeting?
To introduce a new schedule for the year. That's the word that I'm looking for. We said going forward, the last meeting we talked about, actually the last couple of meetings, but the last meeting ended with the decision to adopt a quarterly meeting schedule. And this one will be April 18th, would be the date on which that falls.
Okay, but since we will have just met in March, I was just wondering if it would be better to put it into May, since we won't have a chapter meeting in April.
We're talking about chapter meetings right now. So we will have, what I'm talking about specifically is about the quarterly chapter meetings. So chapter meetings being on January, again, got canceled today, February, March, and then switching to quarterly chapter meetings for April, July, October, and onwards from there.
Okay, but what I'm saying is we changed the policy about meeting in April. We've not met in April because of the fact that a lot of our members were involved with their clients in tax. Now, admittedly, the date is after the tax deadline, but we just have not met in April.
Correct. Yeah, and we've thought about that. Do definitely want to be sensitive to it. And after the tax deadline, we were comfortable meeting in April. And if that is the case next year, that the third Wednesday of the month is before the tax deadline, then we'll certainly revisit that next year. But like I said, being that it is after the tax deadline, and especially being that we're not talking about having an entire half day set aside for this, but instead just an hour and a half long meeting with the social component afterwards, we were comfortable introducing that. Is that a red flag for you though, Royce?
No, it's first I'd heard of it. Apparently I was not listening. I have not seen it. I know we talked about quarterly meetings, so are you saying we're not going to meet again as an FPA chapter until April?
No, we're going to adopt the quarterly meeting schedule starting in April. So we'll a transitional period from January through April, being that we'll have a meeting, supposed to have had a meeting today. We'll have a meeting again February 21st. We'll have a meeting again March, what's the date, 17th? Sorry, March 21st. Yeah, February 21st and March 21st, we will have meetings. And then again on April 18th. But at that point, we won't have a chapter-wide meeting again until July 17th. I'm sorry, July 18th.
Okay, I got confused because under my notes here that you had said it was just talking about board meetings, and I thought those were the ones that were just going to start going quarterly.
No, I'm sorry for the confusion. We are not talking about board meetings right now. We are talking about chapter meetings.
What I'm saying was the information that you sent out that was the only thing that was highlighted, was that we should prepare for board meetings for those. And then as soon as we were going to quarterly board meetings, I had not seen anything about us going to quarterly meetings for the chapter.
I see. That should have been included in the minutes of the last two board meetings. I know you weren't able to make at least one of them. But again, you're right in saying we do need to, since we're going to adopt a quarterly chapter meeting schedule, we do need to talk about how the board is going to meet over those timeframes as well. But assuming that this Zoom meeting goes well, we could theoretically maintain this strategy from here onwards. Are we answering questions, Royce, or still muddy in the water?
I'm wondering if our whole chapter is aware. So you're saying that we're going to meet monthly through April.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, because if I'm confused, I'm just wondering how many other people might be. And I had not seen that sent out. So,
no, that was today. Today was supposed to be the day that we announced that.
I got you. Okay. It's about
today. We did not bring in a speaker for this meeting with the intent that we would spend time debriefing the members that showed up to the meeting and say, this is the plan going forward. We're going to have a meeting structure that looks like this. We'll have supplemental programming to complement that and hopefully engage you a little bit differently going forward. So since the meeting is not happening, Kate and I are actually going to coordinate hereafter to put together some type of announcement, whether it be video announcement or otherwise, to talk through those changes. But here I am with you guys hoping to get those changes absolutely ironed out so that we're on the same page when we broadcast that.
Got it.
Am I muddying the water for anybody, or does that make good sense to everybody?
Yeah, Nathan, Brian, I think I understand. Can you go ahead and finish out those dates? You said July 18. Can you finish out the dates for the balance of the year? Yeah,
the formula will still be the third Wednesday of each quarter, as opposed to the third Wednesday of the month. So getting a similar formula, just making it per quarter. So let's see, January 17th, February 21st, March 21st, April 18th, July 18th, and what I want to talk with you guys about as well is introducing a symposium, or not introducing, but bringing the symposium back for October 17th.
Okay,
everybody get those dates? Good deal.
Got it.
Cool. Okay, so like I said, understand those meetings will still be an hour and a half long, meeting at 3:30 to 6:30, with the last hour and a half being the social component to things. Hopefully to host at TrustCore. Daryl, I got kicked off of the video conference for some reason right at the end of what you were saying, so touch base with me if anything groundbreaking that I need to know. But we'll continue to coordinate, and if that's going to work out, that's wonderful. If that's not going to work out, we'll revisit. Is anybody on the board have feedback, negative or positive, about using TrustCore, with the sensitivity being that it is obviously another financial institution? I don't like to play favorites. It just so happens that TrustCore has a wonderful space, and Daryl happens to bring the largest number of constituents to our institution of any financial firm in the Nashville area. So feedback on hosting at TrustCore, negative or otherwise?
This is
Nathan, Brian,
I think it's a great idea.
Two people.
I think it's all positive.
Brian, say good idea. Anybody else?
Yes.
This, Michael, I second it. I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a conflict of interest using their facility. And If there are members or concerns, Daryl and them are very professional. There is no solicitation. There's not been an issue. Sorry about that. So, I think, sorry about that, the GPA, but I don't think there's an issue. One thing I would want to share with you on the schedule, I know right before I was trying to get clicked over before you closed out on that. On the schedule, I think it's something to consider is as you work through what that calendar is going to look like. I know targeting right now the third Wednesday of the month. I would bring up that you may want to find what the subject matters of those training events are going to be. Identify that subject matter expert that you want to invite in. In the past, we've had good speakers that we wanted to bring in, but we were unable to get them to come in because we were locked in on a specific day in the month, and they didn't have availability. So that became an issue where if it was on Tuesday, they were available. If it was on Thursday, they were available. But a hard and fast only on that Wednesday can be an issue when we really want, if you're doing quarterly meetings and you're really wanting to bring in a top-notch speaker, sometimes the flexibility is needed for that accommodation to that speaker schedule.
Kevin Mitchell, I know you've been working pretty diligently so far with in conversation with some potential speakers. Can you add some color to that comment?
Yeah, I would actually tend to agree with Michael in that regard. We're all set to go for April with Ted Klontz, and we're all set to go for July with Derek, who is Michael Kitsis's right-hand guy, who's completing his PhD in retirement income strategies, and has 2 really good hour-long segments that he can dedicate to breaking out what he's seeing. And so, but from the symposium standpoint, that is really my biggest backfill that I'm trying to work on now. And if we are to end up agreeing as a board to push on with a February and March meeting, then I have already run into that in some scenarios where, it would have totally worked if it was a Thursday, but we're pushing for a Wednesday or whatever the case is. So there are 2 other open dates at this point that I'm trying to work to backfill. That may actually be a good segue into, I know Nathan, we were discussing on Monday that he felt strongly about wanting to do a February and March meeting. Just wanted to really confirm that we are going to go that route, and then just put it to the board to see what thoughts are there. Nathan?
Okay, we can definitely follow that segue. So 2 things to respond to, I guess, from what you said, Kevin. One of which being the potential issue of scheduling on Wednesdays and Wednesdays only. I would love to hear some feedback on that topic. I'm curious to know if there's a creative and effective answer to that issue. Going back to the idea of one of the strengths of this association is and has been consistency, knowing that third Wednesday is going to be a meeting, and maintaining that could be a strong selling point for us. May not need to rework our schedule just for a speaker. But if the board and the association wants to do that, then maybe that's the route that we want to go. So if you've got thoughts, please give me some response on that. And then the other issue was February and a March meeting, whether or not to host those. Like you said, I feel pretty strongly about the desire to have them. For the reason being that we've always had monthly meetings, especially knowing that January has not happened now. If we don't have a February March meeting, that means that we as an association go from November all the way to April until, without meeting. And I don't see that as a good thing. Would like to have as loud of a platform as possible and as frequent a platform as possible to announce the changes, just like Royce mentioned. If she's confused, then how many other people are confused? Well, hopefully we can broadcast this as often possible that there are changes coming and to expect those and those are coming. So those are my thoughts on the February and March meeting. If anybody else has feedback on that, please tell me that. Also, other issue being the Wednesday strict schedule, whether or not to stick with that or whether to be willing to bend that. What are our thoughts on those two topics?
Hey, Nathan.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, since this meeting has not happened, then yes, we certainly need to have the February meeting. And the fact is, just because your meetings are quartered, it doesn't have to mean they have to be on the first of the quarter.
Yeah.
It just means that they are within the quarter. But yes, I think for sure the February, and if you wanted to skip the March and then say we're starting quarterly on April, that probably, once everybody has gotten the idea, if there's enough feedback and publicity for it. But the only thing that bothers me is if October is the last meeting for the year, and we've always traditionally had a November meeting where we elect the board, and the October meeting is going to be the symposium. I think that might be a little confusing this year unless we figure out a better way to maybe have the November meeting just to transition.
Hey, Nathan, this is Taylor. Can y'all
Yes.
hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay, good. Just one thought that I had on what Royce just said about the November, the importance of the November meeting historically in electing the board. And this is just a brainstorming. I don't know if there's rules around this, but would there be an option of doing like an electronic vote in some way? I mean, quite honestly, I feel like we might get better participation if we did it that way than depending on who shows up to a meeting. But I'd be curious to sound that off of FPA National if they've seen chapters, do a vote electronically. Just something to consider.
I like that actually, and it does make sense. I'm on the same page with you, knowing that the vote in, at least in my experience, has been, are you guys okay with this group being your board? Great, cool. This is going to be our board, and the people that were not up there originally are typically on board with it. So having the ability to reach out and letting people have a electronic vote may give us another opportunity to engage the full breadth of the 190 chapter members as opposed to the 15 or 20 that show up for the meeting. Because I don't know that we need to work a meeting in simply for the sake of electing a board.
Well, then you're going to need, unless you change the bylaws, you're going to have to give the nominees the 30 days, either at the July meeting or at the October symposium, and then have the vote in November. I mean, in other words, you're going to have to make sure that they have plenty of notice. It's not about the fact that it's always just been a blanket approval, but people had knowledge of the nominees so that they could submit people if they wanted to.
Sure. So we could still, so the concern there becomes, does the membership have the requisite 30 days advance notice before voting time to consider the upcoming, or the people that they'll be voting on?
And I would say you almost need to make it 60 in order for people who might want to submit other nominees. Have some period of time in there in which they had to submit those, so that everybody knows who it is 30 days prior.
I could even see the quarterly schedule and having October, the October meeting working really well from that perspective, saying that, all right, in July, we will broadcast very heavily that we are considering the upcoming board and taking suggestions. And the suggestions need to be in by the October meeting. And in the October meeting, we'll spend some time at the symposium discussing the upcoming board elections. and let the voting process be open from then for the next 30 days, and then make an announcement in November who the final board was, or who the elected board becomes. Does that fill requirements, or is that too dramatic a change from historical norm?
I think that sounds workable. I just think we need to make sure we do an update on our bylaws to make it, what's the word? Set in stone is the only thing that comes to mind, not so much. In other words, we just need to update and make sure that the membership knows what's coming up, so they could, if they had somebody they wanted to nominate, not that we've always had a rush of that.
Sure. That makes sense, though. That makes sense. I'm gonna spend a moment after this meeting and review the bylaws and just take a look at what it says about that, because Royce, I bring it up because I had not given that any specific thought. But
well, when I was looking at it, I had, I'm visual, so when I'd written it down, I thought, whoops, we're cutting out the voting. So yes, it would have to be in a different time frame. But here again, as I said, quarterly meetings does not mean it has to be on the first of the quarter. It could always be the middle month of the quarter, which now that we've had this January situation, it may be that the middle month is better.
Yeah, that's true. The reason why I did not propose lead us towards anything middle of the month or end of the month was to maintain as much consistency as possible, knowing that we have always met the third Wednesday of the month.
No, I'm talking about not the date in the month, but the month. Each quarter has 3 months in it. We could meet the middle month of the quarter. The middle, like February, we could do February, if we want to change the meet in April, February, April, or in other words, let it be the second month of the quarter, maybe is a better way to say it.
Yeah. I personally am going to suggest that we reconsider that next year. I think that's a perfectly fine route to go. Have no inherent disagreement with that, but just to maintain as much, just to not rock the boat as much as possible.
Yeah, you're right.
Hey, it's Danny. Two, we should keep it at April and July because Kevin's already lined up speakers for both of those meetings, I assume. So,
good point. One thing that I'm going to briefly derail and then come back to the top of hand. One thing that is going to be pretty crucial to the success of the quarterly meetings and the new calendar is the more robust programming that's going to complement the chapter meetings. So I'm very interested to hear from Taylor and to hear from Brian and to hear from Brian and Royce and Jerry and pretty much everybody who's got other events going on. Look forward to hearing more from that in a little bit. Let me talk specifically about the symposium. And actually less talk and more ask because we've got a very open slate as to how we can and or want to do this. 2 years ago, 16, I was at the symposium at Lipscomb that I think went over, not Lipscomb, but Belmont, that I think that went over very well for those that attended, but did suffer from people leaving halfway through the day. So my first question is, personally, I like the full day format, but is that the route that we want to go for the symposium? Do we want to adopt a full day symposium, or would we rather adopt a half day symposium? Let me ask it a little bit more pointed and turn the mic over to Kevin. Kevin, from your perspective, as you're potentially booking speakers, is a half-day symposium going to be, well, let's just say it this way. What's your preference between half-day or full day?
Well, I think even before that, and I don't want to play hot potato with this subject, but as I heard you answer, or as I heard you ask the question, my mind immediately went to what is that going to entail regarding revenues we'll need from sponsorships? Who from the past do we need to make sure that we appease? And this may be a good point in time to actually open up the conversation around sponsorships, what we're thinking about for the new year, because I do know that is going to be an important component. So before I jump down a path of saying, hey, let's go book 5 independent slots that may or may not be applicable to CE, I'm sure that we do need to mark off the list that we've raised the necessary funds or that we've kept certain speakers, whether it's, I mean, I'm sure we have to have ethics in there at some point, which I would recommend we have later in the day to make sure that attendance stays strong. And so, I think from just making sure the math works from the organizational standpoint, maybe we talk first about how corporate sponsorships or sponsorships in general will look, and go from there.
Okay. Not going to let you off the hook. We're going to bring it right back to you. But Danny, what's going through your mind as he says that?
Well, I think that we've tried in the past to do a full day, and the response has been people have left or they just could not commit a full day. I think going more towards a very filled half day would be my vote. And like the 4 of us that were there Monday, we talked about doing that at a special site that might attract more participation. It's all going to depend on how many people can we get. It's going to be easier to fill. We're trying to fill 4 or 5 hours of speakers than 8.
I think part of his question was, what I heard from his question was more along the lines of these 2 issues. One being, if we reach out to speakers, will we have X numbers of speakers that are just going to naturally come from our sponsors that we need to appease, number 1. And number 2, what is sponsorship going to look like this coming year in terms of revenue received, how it's going to be, what we're going to need to provide, what the expectations are going to be, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe to hark in on something that we talked about on Monday, maybe give us some update on what you're working on with the sort of redesign on corporate partnerships.
Okay. Well, we're really open to any ideas right now, and we're looking at totally trying to revamp the way that we approach sponsorships in this chapter. So one of the ideas that we came up with was not trying to just get a sponsor for a 15-minute commercial at the monthly meeting, but to go to these potential sponsors, and say, hey, we are looking at an annual sponsorship, and we're going to have different tiers of sponsors. So maybe a platinum level, a gold level, and a silver level. And the higher your tier, obviously, the more you're going to get with that sponsor. This would help, I think, open it up, because if somebody can only do, if they can't do that Wednesday of, third Wednesday of the month for that time period, we're really limiting ourselves. But if we have something for the whole year, and we can say, okay, we can fit you into this meeting, or you can be a part of this, or here's all the extra benefits that comes with this level of sponsorship. That's really what we're working on right now, is my subcommittee, which is just myself and Lisa Dreer. So let me also say, if anybody else knows of people that want to be a part of my subcommittee, I really welcome that. but we're just looking at that annual sponsorship and trying to come up with kind of a template of here's all the benefits and here's the differentiators between the different tiers. And then as soon as we've got that nailed down and everybody basically approves of that, then I want to shoot that out to everyone who's willing to send that message out and to speak to people.
Hey, Nathan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, just to kind of go off what Danny's saying, I think when we're talking about getting these corporate sponsors and what we're going to offer them as far as value for what they're giving us money for, we don't need to back ourselves into the fact that they're going to have an hour to speak at our symposium. I think finding out the way that we want to model our symposium is going to be more important, and then putting those sponsors in where they fit in. And what I mean by that is that if we're going to have the platinum level sponsors be able to do a table setup and then be able to do the round table, that's going to be more important than saying platinum level sponsors get their whole hour to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And then for us to find relevant content speakers to speak at our symposium, I think that's going to be more important.
So when you're saying that, the idea of, are they going to have the round table, are going to have spaces set up, are they going to have enough exposure, so on and so forth? In my mind, that supports the idea of still having a full day symposium, because a full day means more exposure to these sponsors. So Danny, agree or disagree?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, if we have the sponsorship levels there that's secured for the year, then it comes back to who are we getting, what speakers are we getting, how are we going about filling a whole day, and what the cost is going to be. But yeah, you're right. If we have a full day of that October meeting, then that gives more opportunities, hopefully, for more sponsors and different tiers and different levels and breakout sessions, roundtable discussions. So, yeah, I mean, I could see that if we could fill it for a full day.
Okay, so let's say real quick, the way that we looked at this is if we did 9 to 10, almost like a social hour where they got to walk around from table to table. People found their seats in that sense. 10 to 11:30, we did the round table where it was almost like the speed dating with the specific sponsors that are paying in there. Lunch from 11:30 to 12:30. And then 12:30 till 3, we did the breakout sessions running an hour to an hour and a half, with ethics being the final one to choose from, I guess, or maybe just have one final ethics meeting. But at the end of the day, the meeting's over at 3. Just to kind of put a concrete, this would be a plan. Is that something that everyone could get behind, or do we need to make changes from there?
That sounds good to me. I mean, I would really like to add some more, maybe something in the morning for food-wise, maybe some sort of breakfast foods where people can come and maybe socialize a little bit beforehand.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. And I think then having that, we can offer that to those corporate sponsors in the morning, let them know the morning is going to be all about them. And then Kevin can worry about filling in the speakers with relevant content in the afternoon. That way we're keeping those people staying there in the afternoon. What do you think about that, Kevin?
Yes, I'm on the same page with you guys on that. And just to catch everybody up to speed, I'm not sure if everybody is right there with us. I know we're starting to flesh out some details for the symposium, but part of the whole thought, in the same vein of wanting to maybe redesign how we do this whole speaker model for the organization, we've had to rethink, I guess, just how the traditional model has worked. In just working with Nathan and hearing from some of the past members, the traditional model seems as if it's typically been some type of commercial. And, Danny had a good anecdotal example when he brought somebody, a provider last year, who was slated next to the FBI speaker. And unfortunately, it turned out to where all the attention and interest fell on the FBI speaker after the fact, and felt more like a loss to his provider, who happened to be helping underwrite the event. And so, that anecdotal example to me seems a little broken in the traditional sense. Maybe, the speaker was a big hit, but the guy who was paying for it got slighted. And so the overarching effort, I think, on our part is to try and make the organization more of our own, meaning let's maybe push a little bit away from CE and get to a place where we bring in relevant, strong content that's relevant to the 2018 advisor. And I think part of that redesign is going to have to lean on the corporate sponsorships to not only go after partners and presenting a value proposition of why it would make sense to partner with us, but also going out to all of our employers, whether you're the business owner or whether you're an employee, and then going to your CEO and asking to put some type of partnership together with the organization so that we can become in a position where we can be self-sustaining. And again, I didn't mean to put that on Danny, but really, that is the concern, is that, if we are to get thoughtful, relevant speakers that are not tied to a commercial pitch that I'm not sure everybody is dying to hear, then we will need resources to do so. And, the numbers that we ran roughly were, 40,000 thereabouts for the year. So at that point, it's just about making the math work and figuring out whose employers are going to be interested to come in for $500 or $1,000, and then going after, I think, bigger, maybe trying to segment it out to where you've got a partner in each segment that, supports the financial planning trade, whether it's a banker, a CPA firm, an attorney firm, and they're the sole provider, or they're the sole industry, or they're the sole company within their own industry as a partner of the FPA. But we're trying to find new and creative ways to raise resources so that we can be self-sustaining, so to speak.
To those of you who did not chat, sorry, go ahead, whoever was speaking.
No, this is Burton. So am I understanding correctly, there would not be a CE opportunity in the morning before lunch?
I think we're open to ideas.
Well, I think it might be a challenge if you don't offer some type of either keynote speaker or something that you would have CEs with, that you might get people coming in at lunch and just skipping the morning.
I'm with you on that, Burton. Thing that needs to be pretty spread out, something to bring people there first thing in the morning, as well as something to keep people there at the end. And if it's ethics at the end and keynote speaker at the beginning, and sponsors, speakers intermixed in between, then that's great. And if not that,
and we can do the same schedule. We could just start a little earlier and
sure,
insert an hour, a CE speaker, say at 9:30 to 10:30 or 9 to 10, and start at 8. We could still end at the same time.
Yeah. One other thing that I thought went well in the symposium in October of 2016 was the multiple lines guest speakers. We had, Michael, you can speak to this if you remember more directly than I, but we had probably 3 or 4 different speakers at a time in different rooms. And I think that went over really well for smaller breakout sessions for a handful of hours. Is that something we want to pursue, that style? This is really important guidance for Kevin as he's trying to pick speakers. Or do we need to, or rather, would we prefer to maintain, one room sort of keynote speaker setup from start to finish?
One thing that Jerry and I looked at when we put that schedule together was that we wanted to make sure there was a breakout if an individual in there had a specialization. And the reason we had 3 speakers is we had insurance, we had investment orientation, and then we had practice management. So for every breakout session, we tried to have somebody that was speaking in one of those 3 disciplines.
Mm. I really like that format.
So that would require multiple rooms, right?
Yeah, it does. So Garrett, I'm going to turn it back to you. You laid out a schedule, and as you were doing it, it was kind of broken up, so I didn't gather all of the details. But with that, schedule you just proposed, how does that work in there?
I mean, that was the same way when we were looking at speakers, just having those speakers be the breakout sessions. If we need to do that after lunch, then let's do that after lunch. That way we have a keynote in the morning. We have our corporate sponsors for our FPA during the time after the keynote until lunch, and then have the CE credit classes and the relevant content classes, or the breakout sessions, excuse me, after lunch until ethics, and then have ethics be one big meeting from there.
Okay. So in theory, we're looking at a keynote speaker, one, let's see, 2 hours of 3 different speakers, that's 6, and then ethics, so 7 total speakers for that one day. How's that sound from your end?
I like it. I mean, you know, I don't want to I don't want to plan the whole symposium by myself, obviously. So it's really about what the board wants as well.
Kevin, does that sound like again, finding on top of an ethics speaker, trying to find another 6 or 7 different speakers on top of the ethics? Is that overwhelming, or what's going through your head as you hear that, just for the one day?
No, it's all good. That actually works out well, given that we've gone to quarterly. That actually really trimmed down the subject matter I was able to get in through the year. So it'll take a little bit of extra work, but that should be fine. I mean, if we break it out by an expert in insurance, investments, practice management, keynote, and I'll have to fill in the other 2, but I'm not worried about that.
Okay, wonderful. Well, the more organized you can get, the more you'll be able to outsource some of that work to Michael, to me, to everybody else involved, and we can work together to get that done. But what I'm hearing across the board is that the board seems to be on board with a longer full day, or roughly full day, symposium. Does anybody have a strong opinion otherwise? Okay, I will assume not. Yep.
No, I said great. Yeah, that's good. I think as long as the content is relevant, then people are going to come and they're going to stay.
Excellent.
Hey, Nathan, it's Kevin.
Yeah, please.
One final comment. I just want to make sure that everybody hears this from me, that I'm completely open to any other speakers that you've found to be amazing through a conference you've been to or a personal relationship you have. So this is not meant in any way for Michael and myself to be, I mean, we want to take ownership of this and lead it all the way through, but we are also very open to any strategic partners, relationships, folks that you know that you would love to hear more on. So just wanted to keep that line of communication open.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. One final thing that I will bring up before turning the mic over to all of you is what Royce alluded to earlier, that is schedule of board meetings throughout the year, knowing that we're going to adopt a quarterly chapter meeting schedule. How do we want to orchestrate our monthly, or I mean, do we want to orchestrate monthly board meetings? And my starting proposal is that this seems to work well, this format. So on our off months, I think that I would propose we maintain a 2 p.m. to 3:30 Zoom video conference in May and in June, and then again in August and September, and again in November. Well, I guess not in November, but again, still meeting monthly as a board, but when we don't have a chapter meeting to correlate it with, we will meet via video conference alongside of that. What is everybody's thoughts on that issue? Any feedback or guidance? Brian, Royce, I'm really curious to know the old timers perspective, and I say old timers not for age, but since I've been around for a while in the association.
Well, it occurs to me that it might be good to have a board meeting in November if you're going to need to sum up the success of the symposium and look at proposing the budget for the next year and
Okay.
those kinds of things, and you'd be bringing in the people who have just been elected.
Okay. I guess we did do that last year, and so it would make sense to maintain that same pattern. Well, I guess, did we have a November meeting last year or not? I know the board met, but
We had the November chapter meeting.
Yeah, that's the one that was at Trust Board, wasn't it?
no, that was in September. Yeah. So
But we voted in November at the meeting, yes.
Yeah.
But I just think if you just do not meet again before the end of the year to maybe just wrap things up and bring on the new people, have a co-meeting for the board that will have been, in other words, because the nominees will have known they're going to come on the board unless somebody
sure.
does a coup.
And it is
If
also
we had a coup, it would be good if we had a coup in the FPA. It might get some blood flowing. So
a coup in the FPA. I think that's what's happening right now, Royce. You see
okay. No, I'm talking about for the nominees for the board.
Fair enough. Okay, well, is anybody opposed to monthly remote meeting and then quarterly meeting to meet in person? And I'm still going to suggest that we maintain a meeting in person. Oh gosh, won't work very well to meet beforehand because a lot of us will need to be very involved in getting set up. But why don't we say after the symposium in October, but still beforehand on the July, or rather the April and July meetings. That makes sense, or did I just kind of throw out a lot? Did I just word vomit at you guys, or did that make sense?
Word vomit.
Okay, so proposal is quarterly meeting in person before the meetings, April and July. But since we'll have a full day symposium in October, won't work well to meet before that meeting. So tentatively, we will plan to meet after that meeting, 4 o'clock or something like that. We may have to play that one by ear. That's when we'll meet, but we'll still maintain the third Wednesday of every month when having a chapter meeting. That means we'll simply be Zoom meeting. So again, third Wednesday of every single month, except for December, we will be meeting, whether it be in person alongside the chapter meeting or via Zoom.
Hey, Nathan,
What?
I'd love to put those on the calendar now.
Okay.
Just like I did this afternoon, I would love to get them all on our calendars, set up the Zoom meetings. It'll take me a little bit, but I'd love to send all those invites out, get it on all our calendars. I know we all have a lot going on, and I think it'll help prevent some conflicts, especially going later into the year as things come up.
I fully support that. I think that's.
So you said, you're saying third Wednesday of the month on the months that we don't have a member meeting, we'll meet via Zoom just like this.
You got it.
Okay, cool. I'll do that after this meeting.
Thank you, Kate. Really appreciate it. Okay, well then, on that note, I'm going to turn it over to y'all and get a.
This is Jennifer Himes. I think I emailed you about this, but the third Wednesday in March is when Karen from FPA National was doing the Advocacy Day training webinar at 2 for all Tennessee FPA members that were interested. So that would conflict with the in-person board meeting for any board members that were planning on attending the advocacy call.
That's right.
Okay, so shift to Tuesday or Thursday of that week? Preference?
It's going to be what we do. Okay, since that's the case, why don't we shift it to Thursday the 22nd for that month?
Okay. Got it.
So since everybody's going to get a calendar invite for these meetings, does that make sense enough for now? And Jennifer, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, I will assume yes. So then I will turn it back over to you guys and let you all give me a quick update as to what's going on within each of your committees. Kate, let's start with you. We'll follow the agenda as I wrote it out on the email earlier. So
Yep, I'll be quick. Yep, I'll be quick. So really quickly, I'm going to share my screen and go over a communications policy moving forward so that we can keep everything running efficiently. I sent this to all of you earlier today, and this is mainly just to keep the communications running smoothly. Obviously, without Patricia or an executive in place, I'm shouldering the communications duties, and even going forward, we want to get these things running as smoothly as possibly. We really need to have at least 3 weeks promotion in advance of any event that we have. It was really tight on this January meeting, even without, of course, the cancellation. So just going forward, let's just keep that in mind. And if we can get everything over to myself or the chapter executive by the last business day of the previous month for something that you have going on in the next month. So for example, if you have something planned for February, I'm going to need all the information by Wednesday, January 31st, end of day. And what I need is I need the date, the start and end time, location, being specific as possible. I'm going to need parking details and any kind of special instructions, like for example, Lipscomb, if you want to show a map of where people need to go, anything like that. A short description of the event and why members should care and want to be there. Speaker bios, speaker headshots, and any kind of images that you want to go to promote the event on social media. How does that sound?
I love that. I'm so glad to see it. Very well done, Kate. I hope that we can all follow that. And the first thing that comes to mind is directed at the advocacy committee, knowing that we'll have an advocacy day happening in, late March. The sooner we can get information on that, and the earlier in advance we can start making promotions about it to gather some excitement, the better. So great example, and as well as we start to think about next gen and career development and knowledge circle and pro bono issues as well, let's get that communication out and be really intentional with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just speaking for myself here, what I can use from all of you, as many of you know, I am taking the CFP exam in March. And so given my extremely tight schedule over the next 2 months, I am really going to need you to stick to those deadlines, and certainly for our new executive as well. I just think it's a great habit for us to get into moving forward. But yeah, definitely I'm going to need anything that's happening in February. I'm going to need that information by end of this month. And then same thing with March, very end of last business day of February as well. And that will just ensure that we get the word out, take advantage of all these awesome channels we have, the website, our email list, of course, our Facebook channels, Twitter account, LinkedIn, and also shout outs to Garrett, Burton, and Kevin, who helped out with some of the promo by following some of the things I sent over. I do really need help from everybody on the board on all this, and especially with personal invitations to people, whether that be sending, forwarding an email, inviting someone who's never been to an FPA meeting before, or a knowledge circle or next gen event, whatever it may be. We do need it to be a team effort, not just coming from me. So appreciate all your help on that, and look forward to getting the word out as best we can.
Full support of that. Kate, keep me posted how I can help with that going forward. I think that's a wonderful strategy, and I appreciate that it's so well laid out. I think that'll be very easy for the chapter executive to adopt whenever he or she comes in.
Perfect. I'm going to stop this screen share now and turn it over to the next person.
Perfect. Let's do that. Membership from Garrett Sorensen.
All right. So
on the agenda. So my apologies on that. No, I didn't. Get it right. Good.
So as where we're at right now, we're still sitting at 184 members. We have one new member, which is just somebody from the CFP class, which puts our retention rate at 82.4 still, which is great. It's up a little bit. However, we did have 5 lapsed members this current month, so I am going to be trying to find a way to get in contact with them and find out if we can't figure out why that took place. Trying to find where I put you guys here. Current memberships, we had a total of 21 members renew this month alone, including Brian Johnson. So that's great. I think everyone wants to give him a round of applause for that. The biggest thing I'm running into right now is some of the things that we talked about, doing a membership longevity award and some of the other recognitions that we're going to start giving our members. I'm struggling to get that information from FPA National. The membership director website here on FPA 1 has not been updated since like 2016. So I'm gonna have to actually reach out to them, whoever is in charge of that individually, so we can start giving those awards out. I do want to start doing that at the quarterly meeting. The only thing I'm really asking for at this point is maybe just 10 or 15 minutes in the beginning of each and every meeting that we have, in order for me to come up, stand in front of everybody and give the spiel as to why they need to be recruiting for our chapter of the FPA. I think I was talking to Nathan on Monday, and I got the information from Kate as well, that if you're a member of the FPA and you're going through the CFP certificate program, that saves you $200 on the test alone. Signing up to be a CFP certificate member in the FPA is only $120. And if you use somebody else's name, it saves you $10. So you're literally putting $90 back in your pocket just by becoming a member of the FPA when you go to take the CFP test. So I think getting that information out to people is going to help boost our membership at the beginning. Of course, to retain those individuals once they become members, it's going to come down to programming and how well we do on those quarterly meetings to make sure that they want to keep coming back after that year where they've passed the CFP. So that's really all I have for our end. So that's really my only ask is 10 or 15 minutes of each meeting just to kind of talk to our current members.
Did you say, Garrett, that we have one new member?
We do, yes.
Cool. I know you and I talked recently about doing a breakfast with the president for new members. I'd love it if we could start doing that quarterly, maybe the day, whenever it is. Let's you and I touch base after this, if and when and how we can start collaborating that.
Sounds great.
Great stuff. Love the 82% retention rate. Kevin and Michael, y'all have already spoken a lot today. I don't know that you're going to have a whole lot to update us on beyond what you've already said, but from programming, bring us up to speed on where we are, what we've got booked, what sort of struggles you're running into this year report.
So I really want to take no longer than about a minute. We've already taken up plenty of everybody else's time. We are all set for April, July, and we've got a few others in queue that may be able to fall in February and March. And I think my biggest target at this point is just to start filling in the symposium date. And so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Sponsorship from Danny Robb, going through a major redesign. Have you got anything put together in terms of what that redesign looks like, in terms of the tiers? What can you sell on? What do we need to know for our firms, etc.? Did we lose Danny?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Right now, this is just a preliminary rough draft. What Lisa and I are doing this week is trying to come up with a lot of the benefits for the sponsors, some talking points that maybe we can give out to everyone as they are just going about their business every day, and they run into somebody, they can just say, okay, here's a few of the benefits, but I don't want anybody else to have to really talk through it. But if they can just funnel them to me or Lisa and whoever else we can get on our subcommittee, that would be great. But right now, what we're looking at is, like I said earlier, the annual sponsorships, the platinum level. That's looking like $5,000 for the year, and I would like to have three. Ideally, this would be ideal. 3 platinum sponsors at $5,000 a piece, and then 6 gold sponsors at $2,500 a piece, and then and silver at 1,000. That, just those 19 sponsors for the year would give us $40,000 in revenue. Now, I don't know how many people are going to totally balk at that. I know that I have one person that's already said they're willing to come in at 2,500, but it's really going to be crucial for us to build the differentiating factors in each tier. Another thing that we talked about was having a career day event, maybe towards the end of the year, and looking at the possibility of having firms in the city come in at $500 a piece and have a booth and be at this event. We would do our best to draw as many people to this event as possible. But if we got 20 local firms to chip in $500 a piece, that's another 10 grand for our chapter. So
I'd like to add a little bit of color to that. I think that's one thing that Kevin and Danny and I and Garrett as well talked about earlier this week that could be a really good opportunity that each of you need to be aware of in relation to your own firms. We're hoping to start reaching out to financial planning firms rather than just individual planners for some firm level sponsors. Like I said, like he mentioned, something around $500 that says, hey, you know what, we're going to list you as a FPA sponsor. You're going to be involved in your industry, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the benefits that you're going to get from that is the ability to have a booth at our career day at the end of the year. So that's something that for those of you who own your own firms, for those who have the ear of the owners, of the people who are making decisions with the finances, let's be in touch about whether or not that could be an opportunity with your firm. I know that's something that I'll be talking to with Jim Shoemaker very quickly about as well. So keep that in mind, each of you on the board. So Danny, anything else you want to add?
Well, I did want to throw out there the potential location for the October meeting. You think
yes.
I should?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely worth mentioning.
Yeah, so we're talking about maybe holding this symposium in October at Topgolf. And so I've got a connection there, and I reached out to him today, and he's a hospitality manager there, but he's also going to be talking to the people in sales to get back with me. I'm going to get some numbers, and I'm going by there next Tuesday to kind of look through the facilities for the conference rooms and everything and get a better idea of if it's even a possibility. But I think having it there, since that's the new shiny thing in town, I think would be a great draw for people, and it would also entice everyone that plays golf at all to stay until after the meeting, and then we would open it up to days and let people play for an hour or so.
Yeah. Another opportunity to bring in sponsorship dollars. It's National Golf Day to have anything along those lines.
Right. So anyway, that's what we're looking at. But I think that's about all I've got at this point. Anybody's got any questions?
That makes sense to me. Like Danny and I have been in touch about this already. The more organized you can get, the more of a target list you can come up with for potential sponsors, the more you can then communicate with us and lean on us, and the more we can help you. So please be in touch. Like I said, your job is very important, and we all acknowledge that and are willing to come alongside of you if you can tell us how we can help.
Right, and lastly, we did have a sponsor set up for today, so I've already reached out to them and just told them I'll be back in touch soon, but we've got some really good redesigns coming, and kind of gave him a little teaser of what we're thinking of doing, and he was excited about that. So
good. Really glad to hear that.
Hey, Danny, really quickly, those deadlines that I mentioned for communications, we may want to throw sponsorship in there too. Certainly activating on a digital level, I know throws extra value to the sponsors. So if we can attach their name to future meetings across our social media channels and in our email communications and on our website, I think that definitely would step things up for them, make them, certainly give them more value. So if you could also include yourself there and get me that information, I can make sure to include that too going forward.
Yes, I definitely will.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for saying that, Kate. Love it. Brian Johnson, are you still on the call? Brian Johnson is not on the call. Taylor Hollis texted me and said that she had to leave a bit early as well. So it looks like Knowledge Circle and Next Gen, we need to, I'll be reaching out to them right after this to get their sort of written update as to where they are. Mentoring and consulting, Brian Fay and Royce Monk. Opens to what that's going to turn into. So bring it up to speed. Have y'all had a chance to talk through, develop any sort of programming within y'all's committee?
Royce, I'll go ahead and jump in, and you can jump on top any old time. I have sent, sort of like I was in high school and getting my term paper turned in at the very last second, I emailed to everybody a list of notes that essentially are from our conversations that Royce and I have had, and also with Taylor to sort of wrap Next Gen into the mentoring and consulting concept. And we basically put together just a brief mission statement. And I'm going to assume that you all, because you're looking at each other on your screens, are not seeing those emails. Basically, the idea on the mentoring and consulting is first to find out what the membership would like that to be. Who are the people that are in need? Who are the people that would benefit from a mentoring program? And what are the things that they would want to have be a part of that program? And so essentially our goals would be just to assess the demand in the chapter for that kind of a program, define the categories of need, develop guidelines and processes for matching the mentors with the mentees. I hate that word, but it's real. And tracking the activity and the results of those meetings. Coordinate with the Next Gen committee to make sure we're reaching the broadest possible base of members and taking advantage of every opportunity to be compatible with that age segment among our membership. Take a look at how we ensure proper ethical boundaries in the process. I think our own ethics should cover that, but we want to look at what kind of formalities we might want to have about ethics issues, and then simply implementing and promoting that to the membership. So we are clearly on the creation component of this, and basically need to the intent was, if we had had a meeting today, to let the membership know that we are in this process and ask for people who would be interested either in serving as mentors or in participating in the program as a mentee. So, Royce, anything to add? Anybody home?
Yeah, I'm personally am pretty excited to see where this goes, because it could be anything at all. Could be great, could be horrible, who knows? But so the first thing on your goals, that is assess the demand, sounds like the first task in front of you. What's your strategy? What do we need to do to help you in assessing that demand?
Well, I think there's two ways of going about that. One is, as I said, we had anticipated a direct outreach to attending members, but I think that it may be that using SurveyMonkey or something of that sort to do an outreach and see what kind of interest there is, just craft something fairly simple and straightforward to gauge interest and perhaps get some guidance as to, if there is interest, what particular types of mentoring or consulting would be desired. So I think those are really the two ways that occur to me to go about it.
Okay. Well, then if you can start some development of that Survey Monkey, let's wait to see how we find it and get it out. I'd also like to, like what you mentioned, broadcast that as much as possible in the meetings and in the emails, make some announcements about that, and just try to get as much momentum towards that as possible. So I appreciate where you're coming from with that. Keep me posted. Very open book, open slate as to where we go from there with that. Advocacy. Daryl, Jennifer, do y'all want to give a report on what the latest is?
Sure, be happy to. The Tennessee Day is Wednesday, March the 28th. We have an email prepared to go out to the membership to try to generate interest in having people attend. What that will require is a 45-minute phone training session on Wednesday, March the 21st, and then meeting for breakfast on the morning of March 28th for a little more training before we head out. Karen Nystrom with National will be here the night before if anybody that is participating wants to join her for dinner. So I guess what Jennifer and I need to know is, who do we give this letter to send out, to email out to the membership, and who do we want them to reply to?
Kate, can that be incorporated in your communication?
Yep, I'm happy to make sure that gets sent out through our MailChimp account. However, we do need to give Daryl and Jennifer, who's monitoring, Nathan, who's monitoring our Gmail account right now?
Jerry, are you on this call?
Yeah, I'm on the call, and I have, I spoke with Patricia yesterday, and I was able to get past the two-step code to get into the FPA's Gmail account. So I'm in, I switched over the text to my cell phone as well as my personal email address just to kind of monitor things. And yeah, so that's been done. So I'm in the Gmail account now.
Okay. Yeah, so Daryl and Jennifer, just get me all the pertinent details, everything that someone might need to know. Send that an email to me, and I'll get that out. Just tell me when you want it to go, and if you want it to go sometime in February, get it to me by end of business on the 31st this month.
Sure, we'll probably have it to you here within the next week, and then you can just fill out the email address for a reply as well as a phone number if somebody wanted to call.
Got it. So whose phone number should we put?
Kathy Grody, are you on the... Kathy? Nope, Kathy is not. Having issues right now with the FPA chapter cell phone. So last year I gave my personal number for that, but Daryl, what's your preference?
That works for me. Give your number out again. You've been there, done it. So no, I was being funny, but really, if somebody calls and they have a question about it, I've never experienced. I don't really know what's going on. You do. They're going to call me, and I'm going to say I don't know. But if they call you, you at least have some answers for them.
Got it. So Nathan's cell in the email.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or and if we get an executive before that, then the executive could also help field the calls. Added motivation to get that done sooner, right?
Right.
Oh man, yeah. Bring on the motivation. I'm not lacking it right now. I'm on board with that, and that I don't expect that there will be anybody that actually calls, but we'll be able to handle it. Good deal. Everybody who's on this call right now, make sure you put that date on your calendar. That is March 28th, Wednesday. Like you said, it's not a full day thing, but you're mostly going to be out of the office that day, from somewhere around 7:30 in the morning till probably 3:30 in the afternoon. Last year, some people left in the middle of the day, but do expect for most of the day to be taken up. Usually at the end of the day, we spend an hour or so talking with the head of the Division of Securities or Department of Securities, and some really interesting insight into what the government is working on right now. So it's a fun event. It's a fast-paced event. Make sure you're there. Williams, what's the latest on pro bono? Do we have any dates potentially set up with?
Yeah, so I had actually a good talk with Royce this morning to get on the same page about the Sheriff's Center, and we right now have 7 participants in that, and adding Jerry and myself would make 9. I've kind of be an alternate, but we rotate 2 groups through there 4 weeks. It's an hour-and-a-half session, so I'll be continuing to work on that. And Jerry, I actually tried to recommit us to Royce to go through that training either this month or next month. So I'll get back in touch with you later on that. I talked a bit about the drug court and trying to begin a new program there for FPA Middle Tennessee. I've not been successful in that, so I've gone to my second priority is Tennessee Prison for Women. And so I've contacted Kate Watkins, who runs the Lipscomb Life program. We actually have an associate's and bachelor's degree in the Tennessee Prison for Women. So I'm going to go through her relationships and target actually her cohort there, because they've already proven to be those that are looking beyond the inside to go to the outside and been through some specific training. So that's a group of about 20 women. And so that's what I'm working on right now. That would give us 2 full programs. I've also, per Nathan's request, sent our report in yesterday to FPA National for the rescue mission program. And Jerry, we need to probably get some numbers from Curry as far as the last 5 years or so, how many people we've trained there. Both the last 3 years we were inside, and then the last 2 years, which we would have the numbers on, I suppose, when we've been doing the counseling sessions. So that's what I've been doing. I need to get together my committee, which I'm not sure I know all those people. I'm assuming it's Brian and Royce and Jerry and myself, but we need to probably have a short meeting and come up with a mission and some other things. So that's all I have today.
Hey, Burton, this is Kate.
Yes.
Are these opportunities that are open to all FPA members?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So are you thinking, I know that you have a core group of people that have been going. Are you thinking of expanding that to all the members for February?
So we have to find out. If it's still the same program where we're able to go in for 4 weeks at a time. Right now we have 2 groups. A lot of it has to depend on the sheriff's office. And so hopefully, and I may yield that to Royce or to Jerry or to Brian to explain that, but they have some regulations, and so you have to go through a training. And so we would love to find out who would be interested, and then we'll go through the process. But you just can't start, day one walking in and talking about insurance and retirement and some other things. But everyone is able to, if they go through training, I believe. We're limited at how many hours we can be in there for those programs.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Anybody want to add to that?
Once you know for sure, just let me know. Once you know how many people you can get in and sort of when that whole process starts, let me know, and I'll make sure to include that in communications. What I'd really like to do is have in addition to our chapter announcements, this will be a Q2 initiative, but have some sort of a monthly newsletter that includes things like that. That way we give people as much lead time as possible to get involved. And if they need to go through some training or anything like that, we let them know in advance so they can get that on their calendar.
Sure.
Hey, Kate.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Burton. It's Brian. I was just going to say you're describing this accurately, but probably the best way to handle it is simply we have the ability to create course slots as long as we get the minimum number to make a course work. So I think that's typically, we've got 4 or 8 slots. So I think the way to handle it would be we should publish information that describes the program and then just ask members who are interested to contact Burton. And then we can work on plugging them in. If we get a lot of folks, we can expand the program. If we get only a few, then we look to see how we can fit them in or not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it'd be great to turn people away because that would only add excitement for future sessions, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'll work on a description and I'll get back in touch with you, Kate, on
Perfect.
That information. And one more thing I meant to add, in talking to Royce earlier, we talked about collecting data from all of our members as far as the pro bono work they're doing outside of any formal programming. And so, anytime they do counseling pro bono and do teaching and training for the underserved. And so I would love to do some type of survey online, instead of handing a piece of paper around at a meeting. I think this would get some of our members that don't show up at our meetings and
Sure.
collecting that information. So are you the one I need to work through
Absolutely,
that with?
absolutely. And I'd love to highlight what people are doing. And that's another great thing to go in a monthly newsletter. Hey, look at what Burton's doing this month, or, whomever. I think it's great to highlight what our members are doing in the community. And not only that, potentially generating media interest, which is something we really haven't done in a long time from my understanding. So those are the kinds of things that media may be interested in covering.
Okay, great. I'll get back in touch with you on that. We'll work through that. And if we could either put that in one of our meeting announcements or just a separate email to do the survey, I think the great Survey Monkey is perfectly fine.
Perfect. Yeah. Just remember anything for February by end of the month, January.
Right. Okay. That's all I had today.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Let's start it off. And Jerry, are you still on the call? And can you give us any update on career development? Got any more conversation? Chapter? Any dates set up, or what's?
Yeah, thanks. Love to. And again, the vision of this year, career development with me, among the many different things that we can do. As I mentioned in our last meeting, vision is to create and maintain a bridge that students in our community can use to explore career opportunities with employers in the area. So the Tennessee, FPA Middle Tennessee Career Day just seems to be an awesome idea. FPA of Central Kansas City and Missouri has been doing it for almost 10 years now. And I've reached out to the current president of that chapter to get some advice, to help, just sort of understand how they structured it, what their vision was, the agenda, possible speakers, the student target audience, local universities and colleges. So my deadline for doing all of that and this feasibility is the end of the month. So another week or two, I should be able to say, can we realistically be able to put this together, plan it, and execute it some part toward the fourth quarter? And if so, be able to build out the number of volunteers, I guess, equal to the recommended number of people to get this work done. So I like what Danny mentioned, being able to maybe collaborate with other committees here to be able, when we reach out to these potential employers, sort of cross work with them, so to speak, in both our initiatives. That sounds pretty promising.
So what I heard is hopefully going to be targeting sometime in the fourth quarter to do that this year, correct?
Yeah, that's the game plan. If everyone's amenable to that. If not, then, worst case scenario, we've built the framework to have a great one in 2019. I guess my biggest question is, do we start small and, our first shot at this? I'm not sure. In terms of students, college students, there are a number of colleges and universities within an hour or so of here. And, I'll probably be able to learn quite a bit more about this after I sort of get into the nitty gritty with Kansas City. But we certainly have no shortage of possible student audiences we can work with.
That's true. one thing I'll also encourage you is that, yes, we are targeting, it's great to target fourth quarter, but if we need to do something in early part of, say, first quarter of 2019, that could work well from a sponsorship standpoint. I think what I understand from Danny is that we'll be looking for 12-month annual sponsorships. We'll start in April of this year and go until the end of March next year. And that just gives a little bit more run-up time for year's corporate sponsor chair to seek out and find replacements as well. So anyway, we'll coordinate that. Love everything, and I'm excited about that event. Hopefully it will go off as well. I know we're 15 minutes expecting. I have one final question for you as I was listening to everybody. In regards to the February meeting, do we need to maintain that meeting as sort of a replacement to what we were intending to accomplish with today's meeting? Or should we go on with regular programming? Again, should we have a meeting in February that is to explain all the initiatives of our committees to the members that come? Or should we have regular programming?
Hey, Nathan, are we going to do the videos? Were you going to do some videos and send that out to members? Would that be more effective than doing a February meeting? And what are your thoughts?
Kate, you're more of an expert on this than I am, too, given that I'm not at all an expert. Any insight for me there?
I mean, yeah, sure. I'm happy to help create videos with Nathan or whoever. We can definitely do that. I mean, just like we're doing right now, we could schedule another Zoom. We talk for a couple minutes and we record it and send it. Simple as that. It's just a matter of, yeah, it sounds like what you're trying to decide, though, is do you want to send this information that we were going to provide out today and then move forward with something different February, or just simply replace what we were going to do today with the February meeting?
That is correct. And to Mary, well, I mean, honestly, Danny, I think you're right in saying that the videos and that type of reach out is probably going to be more effective than taking a meeting entirely to accomplish that, and may actually set up effective communication within the meeting to say, hey, listen, we already told you about this in the video conference. Burton is needing some help with pro bono to follow what we mentioned. So we've got a survey that we need you to do. Same thing with Brian, and so on and so forth. So, but I guess it also goes back to Kevin. Is it possible to find a February speaker that's going to be relevant for us? Kevin and Michael, rather.
This is Michael. I don't know if Kevin's still on the call or not. We don't have anyone booked for February at the moment, but we've been tossing around a few different names. I don't think it would be an issue to lock someone in and get a topic prepared by any means.
We would love to have some sort of economic overview, market update sort of thing the year off. And I would imagine we could find somebody to sponsor as well as provide a speaker on that. So Michael and Danny, if y'all could coordinate a little bit offline, that might be helpful. But as of right now, let's go ahead and plan on February being a typical meeting with regular programming.
Okay.
And on announcements via video hereafter. That's all that's on my agenda. Again, I know we're a little bit late right now. Does anybody have any final movements they'd like to present to the board?
This is Bob Searcy. On this end, I just want to tell you what a great meeting this has been.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that.
This is Bob Searcy. I joined a little late, but I must admit, this is the most impressive board meeting I've ever been to, even by phone. So and I've been to a few. So very impressive, very active committees. One consideration for February is possibly a quick tour of the lab there at Lipscomb, because I know they would like to show it off. We all, and one thing, if we could, if we could get some of these students to come to some of our meetings, I think that would help us long term. And then the third thing, consideration with this new tax law, a lot of pieces, and I don't know, maybe we're getting flooded by that stuff to our inbox, but someone to address some of the things that might affect from a financial planning perspective might be a consideration.
Yeah, I second that. It's like I'm getting so inundated with information on that I'm not actually reading any of it because there's too much. So that could be very beneficial. Burton, let's you and I touch base offline about Lipscomb next month, and we want to basically revisit the same situation that we've got this month in February and try to go from there. Other than that, thank you, Bob, for that. I feel good hearing that personally. I hope everybody else does too. And as of right now, we will plan on meeting again in February. Unless you hear from me beforehand, you all know what to be doing. So you all have a great day. Thank you for taking the time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.